Hey, welcome back to Based LDS. This is your boy BC. It's Sunday. It's busy, but I am making this video definitively earlier than I did last night at 3 a.m. Tonight it's only tonight it's only 10 p.m. It's been a busy day, but it has been a great Sabbath day. Attended church. Ministered to a friend in the hospital, brought them sacrament, spent some time with them, came home, prepared dinner with my wife so we could have dinner ready in time for the missionaries to come over. Scripture reading with as a family, and then went and tucked my daughter in, and down here trying to get some videos ready, thinking about what I want to talk about today. And I think today I want to do the first book review because I do want everyone to know what it is I'm reading, what kinds of things I'm reading, so that you know what you can expect to hear about on Based LDS with this channel. Because as I said in the my review of Robert Boylan and Apologetics, you have to read, and do some more reading. And I like a wide variety of things to read. I saved my textbooks from college on philosophy and history and psych, and I go over them when I can. I read books on doctrine. I like general books on history, also videos on history. I read a lot, and I read kind of a wide array of things. And I don't just read one book at a time. I'll have like 6 or 7 books, and I'll break them down into bite-sized chunks. So it might take somebody a week to read a book. It might take me 2 or 3 weeks because I'm also reading other things, as well as being into my scriptures and preparing lessons for youth. So right now I'm in the middle of a nibbly tear. As I was looking at what to talk about on this channel, I've already completed a few books that I've wanted to do reviews on. And I finished the first of 3 volumes of Nibbly, and I'm going to get into those later because I kind of want to do those serially, if I can. But I want to start with another book, and this comes from hold on, glasses. This tells you I'm old. BYU Studies Quarterly, and this is from volume 59, number 20, and it is 2020, so this book's a couple years old. I tend to read the quarterly studies slower because it's a series of articles. For those of you that don't have these, it's a series of articles from various authors, and each series will contain a different set of topics, but all the topics will relate. And so this one happens to be revolving around women. Especially what I find interesting, the women's suffrage movement in Utah. So they're not really talking about women in the priesthood or what a woman's place in the home is, or their place in the workplace or in the world in general today. They're looking at it through the lens of the suffragette movement, late 1800s, early 1900s. And I thought that this was a fascinating book. I do like the quarterly studies books. They're a lot of information, and they are set up scholarly. They're not, how do I put this? They're not a faith-based book. They are a scholarly book based on research and context and citations, and it's a great resource to have when you're looking at various interests. With this Votes for Women book, the suffragette movement book, I learned a lot about some of the history of the women's suffrage movement, which is the right to vote in Utah and throughout Mormondom in general. And there are 3 things I want to make note of. First, Eliza Snow was an amazing woman. You know, coming up in the church, you hear about her, you're aware of her hymns. I think she's got some of the better hymns in the hymn book. Not that I'm a big hymn fanatic. Someone's probably going to prove me wrong, but There's probably good arguments why I'm wrong. But she's got some of the most fascinating hymns, I think. The deeper, more thoughtful hymns, doctrinally. Maybe not emotionally touching for me. But like Oh My Father and some of the others are just, they're glorious and they're beautiful. And she was quite the poet. And she was an intellectual force in her day for the church and for women in the church. And frankly, she had to deal with a lot of junk throughout her life. And I was really blessed to have read a little bit about her. And they did this a little bit about her diary and some of the moments fighting for the suffrage movement. They also interviewed a woman who's writing a biography on her. And it's just fascinating, the insights that this woman has on Eliza R. Snow. And I really hope anyone watching this video, you'll take the time to learn more about her, because she's a fascinating woman. An intellectual force, a dynamo of just passion and devotion to the church. And to hear about some of her heartbreaks and some of her setbacks and some of the things that she had to deal with, I think can put some of our problems today in perspective. And that's a beautiful thing. The second one is a small article they did on a woman named Belva Lockwood. And Belva was not a member of the church, but she was a woman who was a suffragette, and she often worked with women of the church to help bring the vote to women in Utah. She's contemporary with all of the great names you might think of related to, say, Relief Society or some of the other women's organizations in Utah. And she was an avid defender of the right of the women to practice their religion how they wanted, which at that time meant polygamy. However she felt about it personally, she felt that women in Utah had the right to live according to the dictates of their conscience and practice polygamy if they so desired. She was a defender of the church who was not a member, because she felt strongly about a person's right to believe in what they're going to believe. I was not even aware of the existence of this woman as a suffragette or in any place in history. I'd never heard of her or read about her. And I am just impressed that the women of the church had such an impact upon her that she took it upon herself to speak out for their right to worship God as they wanted to live according to their beliefs, no matter what the rest of the world thought. And we need to remember that there are people out there who are not members, but are not hostile and are friends, and are, to borrow a term, allies. And we need to build stronger relationships with those people and those organizations that we may not believe and worship the same, but we do have a common set of end goals. And we share values. And that's what matters most. The last point I'm going to cover in this book, and there's a lot of fascinating articles. I subscribe to these. These are great books. But the last one is one of those where I have a conflict because of my harsh anti-identitarian stance. I am anti-identitarian all the way through. Don't bring me your my gender that, my race that. I don't care. I judge people on the individual. That's what it is. That's what the Greeks and Judeo-Christianity discovered, was the primacy of the individual. And there are too many instances in this manual, there's 3 I can think of offhand, where there's a pleading for more women's stories. We need more women to tell their stories. We need to have more women's stories told. We need to have more space for the stories of women. I don't care about the stories of women. I don't give, I don't care. Now, before you're like, oh, misogynist, I'm a patriarchy. Don't care. Because I don't care about men's stories either. I don't care about white guy stories or black guy stories or Asian guy stories. I don't want women's stories, crippled stories. I don't want those stories. Those aren't the stories that matter to me in a faith-based publication. Now again, this is scholarly, but it should come from a faith defensive position of scholarship. Something akin to what Elder Holland talked about in his address last year when he was quoting from Elder Oakes and also Elder Maxwell about having a musket and a trowel, building the faith and defending it. I don't care about the stories of some identitarian position. I want stories of faith. Eliza R. Snow's stories do not matter to me because they're a woman's stories. They matter because they're the story of a woman of faith who overcame adversity, who displayed great strength and fortitude and force of will in sticking to her beliefs, in standing up for those that needed help. Her story matters because of her Christ-like qualities and attributes, and those are the things we need to remember and we need to focus on in the church. So don't bring me we need these stories. I don't care. We need more stories of faith. We need our youth to be aware of these stories of faith. We need ourselves to be aware of these stories of faith, so that when we come along and we're faced with issues on polygamy, we realize that women were not kowtowed and beaten into this, that many of them understood the doctrine and accepted it. They may not have liked it. I am sure Heber C. Kimball and his wife, if you listen to what Elder Madsen has to say, Brother Madsen, holy cow, am I just all word salad tonight. But when you listen to what Truman G. Madsen has to say about Heber being weighed down by the call to have a second wife, and he's stressed and he's depressed and he's not taking care of himself, and finally his wife Eliza comes to him, I think Eliza, but his wife comes to him and says, after she's getting no response from him, she says, I have prayed and I know, and it's okay. Do the will of the Lord. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I cannot imagine the anguish or the hurt, the confusion. But the stories of polygamy are too negative and too out of control, and we don't focus on the positives of faith built, of faith restored, of faith lives bettered. Now, in my mind, I've worked out a rational justification for polygamy, for instance. It's not perfect, it's full of holes, but it works for me. What about black people being denied the priesthood and temple attendance? What about the current struggle for gay people to be accepted in the church, to have their marriages validated? There are so many nuanced angles and ways of looking at things, and we don't need the worldly academic pursuit completely. We need academics tied to faith. So we don't need a woman's story. We need a faithful story. Faithful men, faithful women, faithful black, faithful white, faithful Asian, faithful native. You get the idea. Because it's the faith that matters when we consider these things. So that's all. That's my entire spiel for this video. I hope you all had a great Sabbath. I hope your worship services meant something to you. And I hope you go on to become bigger and better saints. And I hope that this community grows. I am so pleased that I got like 20 views on a video. I'm learning what people like to hear about, what people don't like. So anyway, I love you all, even though I don't know you. I wish you the best this coming holiday season. And I'll talk to you again. Thank you. Have a good night. Peace out.